All right, check it out. That was on. All right, let's get started. Okay. All right. We're going to give our praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh. By Shem Shah, double honor to the apostles, brothers, elders, great millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect. So we're going to go to Ezekiel 35, verse 1. Okay, hold on for a minute. It said, Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me. Say, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. And say unto it, Thou said the Lord power, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee. And I will make thee most desolate, right? Most desolate. Verse 4. And I will lay the city wasted, and thou should be desolate, and thou should know that I am the Lord. Verse 5. Because they have had repressed hatred, and shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time their iniquity have ended. Verse 6. Therefore, as I live, said the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. And said, Thou have not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Right? And I hated blood, blood shall pursue thee. Let's read that again. Let's go to Ezekiel 35, verse 5. Because they have not, because they had perpetuate and shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time of their iniquity have ended. Right? Have ended. Verse 7. That I will make Mount Seir most desolate, and I will cut off from it and have passed out of him that return. And I will fill his mountains with his slain men, and the hills and the valleys, and all the rivers should there fall that are slain with the sword. And I will make thee perishable desolate, and thy city shall not return, yet it shall know that I am the Lord. Verse 10, because they have said, there are two nations, there are two countries shall be mine, and I will possess it where the Lord was there. Verse 11, therefore I live, said the Lord power, and I will even do according to thy anger, according to thy envy, which I have used out of thy hate against them, and I will make myself known among them when I have judged thee. Verse 12, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord, and I have heard blasphemy which I had spoken against the mountain of Israel, said they are laid desolate, they are given us to consume, right? To consume. Ezekiel 35, verse 15, and I did rejoice in the inhabitant of the house of Israel, because it was desolate. So I will do unto thee, thou shalt be desolate, O Mount Seir, and all the doom, even all of it, and I shall know that I am the Lord. Right? I am the Lord. Let's go to Jeremiah 30, verse 16. If I said that right. Jeremiah 30, verse 16. Therefore, all that devour thee should be devoured, and all that adversary, every one of them, should go into captivity, and that spoil thee should be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee I will give for a prey. As we get again, Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 6. Therefore, all that devour thee should be devoured, and all that adversary of one of them should go into captivity, and that spoil thee should be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee who I give for a prey. Let's go to Ezekiel 25, verse 12. Ezekiel 25, verse 12, that says the Lord power, because that Edom had dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and had great offense, and revealed himself upon them. Verse 13, therefore that said the Lord power, I will stretch out my hand upon Edom, and I will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Tema, and die of the demon shall fall by the sword. Verse 14, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they shall do in Edom according to my anger, according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord. Verse 15. No, that's verse 15. Yep, verse 15. Yeah, verse 15. Let me see. All right, what else I got? Let's read that one more time. Hold on. Let's go back to Jeremiah. I think you said Jeremiah. Ezekiel 25, verse 14. It say, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they should do it in Edom according to my anger and according to my fury, and they should know my vengeance, said what they should. 14, yeah. They should know my vengeance, said the Lord power. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 10. Jeremiah 49, verse 10. But I had made Esau bare, I had uncovered his secret place. He should not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brother and his neighbor, and he is not. Right? Let's go right into it.
Growing up, only thing I knew about Ocoee was that we didn't go there. Nobody said why, and I just assumed growing up it was just a town for white people.
A lot of the specifics and the events of the Ocoee massacre, we don't know. It was a horrible, horrible event. African Americans were slaughtered, were driven out of Ocoee for decades. Ocoee was a rural community that would have been pretty familiar to people living in Central Florida at the time, in the late 19th and early 20th century. And it was, a community lined with orange groves and agricultural productions, and it was near Orlando, which was a transportation hub. The railroad came through Orlando. Farmers in Ocoee could go to Orlando and send their goods to market. And so it had a very desirable place, just geography, because it was so close to a railroad hub.
Citrus was the king, and July Perry, being that he was a labor broker for both black and white, he ruled. Some people said that he was not, they said that he was meaner than a junkyard dog. So he probably had to be tough, being that things were the way they were, and to accomplish what he was accomplishing there on the shores of Lake Apopka. Everything was hustling and bustling here, and it was all about success, black or white, success.
They're living in an era of Jim Crow, of segregation, of enforced segregation. They're living in an era when these men in Ocoee, and by 1920 the women too, were full citizens of the United States, had the right to vote. But since the last decade of the 19th century, there have been active efforts to suppress the vote by violence and intimidation. It's suppressed by law.
So there was a great deal of anxiety on the part of white supremacists in Florida to curb the number of African Americans who were going to vote in the 1920 election. So much so that in Orlando, in Lake City, and Jacksonville, days before the November election in 1920, the Ku Klux Klan marched through the downtown in those places, specifically to intimidate African Americans from going out and casting a vote in that 1920 election.
Judge John Chaney, who was going to run for the Senate seat, courted the black vote. He helped July Perry and Mose Norman become registered voters. They paid their poll tax because back then you had to pay your poll tax.
July Perry and Mose Norman, who were better economically situated in Ocoee, push people to register to vote. And if they don't have the money for the poll tax, they will give them the money for the poll tax to register and vote.
Mose Norman, went to the polls in Ocoee to vote. A scuffle starts and he leaves. And I guess he go by and tell July Perry, I'm out of here, because by now he's been attacked. And so the Ku Klux Klan, it was said, went to the home of July Perry. From there, all hell broke loose. He tells his family to flee. Who kills who? Nobody knows. 2 whites end up dead in July Perry's backyard.
News of this gets out and a white mob comes to July Perry's house, armed. And of course, this leads to the Ocoee Massacre.
You have 30 to 60 people that we think died there. It's painful. It's horribly painful to think about being in a situation where people are shooting at you and have set your house on fire, and you're trying to escape in the dark of the night.
Alan Frank's uncle was July Perry. Alan Franks was a refugee or survivor of the Ocoee Massacre. He knew the perimeters of the Lake Apopka. And Alan, who had to carry his sibling who had a physical illness through the... Growing up, only thing, the vigilante group came to the jail and took him away. And they hung him in the vicinity of where Judge Chaney would see his body. And as a reminder to Judge Chaney, this is what happens when you register people to vote.
It was reported very broadly, in fact. The Florida newspapers were reporting it the next day, and then national newspapers took it up. In that wide reporting, it is reported from a white perspective, and a white perspective that sees the horror in
Orlando. He was locked in the jail, wounded near death. The vigilante group came to the jail and took him away, and they hung him in the vicinity of where Judge Chaney would see his body. And as a reminder to Judge Chaney, this is what happens when you register people to vote.
It was reported very broadly, in fact. The Florida newspapers were reporting it the next day, and then national newspapers took it up. In that wide reporting, it is reported from a white perspective, and a white perspective that sees the horror in the 2 white men who died. There are reports, that the town was burned, but the implication often is that that's the fault of blacks, that the town burns down.
The African American accounts of Ocoee lived with the people who experienced them initially. The ones who fled, they went to places like Apopka, went to places north or other parts of the South, and they shared those stories with their descendants who passed those stories on. And this is not unusual with racial terror in these ways. What African Americans did in 1920 and soon after was just seed the story that could be germinated later, which future historians were able to do.
Ocoee suffered greatly after 1920. Who's going to work over there? Not black people from those who knew. So for a long time, the economy suffered, all because of people wanting to vote. I grew up in Apopka during the 50s. With,
Yeah, that's all I want on that one. Okay, let's move on. All right. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 10. It said, "But I had made Esau bare. I had uncovered his secret place. He should not be able to hide himself and see the spoil and his brother and his neighbor, and he is not." Right, uncover his secret place. All right, let's move on. As you see there, okay, move on. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 7. Let me see Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 7. It said, "Flee out of the midst of Babylon. He had delivered every man his soul. Be not cut off of her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense." Verse 7. "Babylon bearing golden cups in the Lord's hands, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunk of her wine. Therefore the nations are mad." Right? Move on. Let's go to Psalms 37, verse something I forget. Psalm 37, verse, is it 38? Psalm 37, verse 38. "But the transgressors shall be destroyed together, and the end of the wicked shall be cut off." Right? The end of the wicked shall be cut off. What's the other scripture? Yeah, Psalm 37, verse 34. It said, "Wait on the Lord and keep his ways, and he shall exalt thee to inhabit the land. When the wicked are cut off, thou shalt see it." Right, thou shalt see it. Let's go to Galatians. Just like Galatians. You gotta take that right. No, yeah. 6 verse 7. Galatians 6 verse 7. It said, "Be not deceived, the Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Right, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6 verse 7. It said, "Be not deceived, the Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Verse 8. "For he that soweth to the flesh should of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit should of the Spirit reap life everlasting." Galatians 6 verse 7. It said, "Be not deceived, the Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Revelation chapter 13, verse 9. "If any man has an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth captivity should go into captivity. He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." Revelation 10 verse 13. Revelation 13 verse 10. "He that lead into captivity should go into captivity. He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." Revelation 18 verse 5. "For her sins have reached up to heaven, and the Most High remember her iniquity." Right? The Most High remember her iniquity. Verse 6. "Reward her, even she have rewarded you. Double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she had glorified herself and lived delicious, so much turmoil and sorrows give her, for she in her heart has set a queen, and no widow, and shall see no sorrow." Revelation chapter 18, verse 8. "Therefore should her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and he should be utterly burned with fire. For the strong of the Lord who judges her," right? Who judges her. Revelation 18, verse 8. "Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she should be utterly burned with fire. For the strong is the Lord, power who judges her." What else? I think I got one more. time I get. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, I forgot. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 21. Proverbs 11, verse 21. The hand joining hand, the wicked should not be unpunished, but the seed of the righteous shall be delivered, right? The seed of the righteous shall be delivered. Proverbs 11, verse 21. The hand joining hand, the wicked should not be unpunished, but the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. Proverbs 6, is it 6, verse 18? Yeah, okay. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 15. Therefore, for his calamity comes suddenly, shall he be broken without remedy. Verse 16. There are 6 things the Lord hate, yet 7 are abomination unto him: a proud look, a lying tongue, the hand that shed innocent blood, a heart that devour wickedness, imagination, foot that be swift and run into mischief, a false witness that would speak lies, and he has sowed discord among brothers. All right, Proverbs chapter 6. Let's go verse 17. Proverbs 6, verse 17. A proud look, a lying tongue, the hand that shed innocent blood. Right, the hand that shed innocent blood. Let's go back to that.
We would not go through what was called who had to carry his sibling who had physical illness through the swamps. I just can't even imagine the pain, the fear of trying to get to a safe place. And July Perry, taken from Ocoee, some say he was near death before he left Ocoee, that he had been wounded, and allegedly tied behind a vehicle and drug into Orlando. He was locked in the jail, wounded near death. The vigilante group came to the jail and took him away, and they hung him in the vicinity of where Judge Cheney would see his body. And as a reminder to Judge Cheney, this is what happens when you register people to vote.
It was reported very broadly, in fact. The Florida newspapers were reporting it the next day, and then national newspapers took it up.
You see here, it said 5 Negroes burnt, one hurt, one hung in Florida. As you see, the hands that shit, and we see something. Because I forgot the rest of this. Just trying to get all to. So as you see.
To Judge Cheney, this is what happens when you register people to vote.
It was reported very broadly, in fact. The Florida newspapers were reporting it the next day, and then national newspapers took it up. In that wide reporting, it is reported from a white perspective, and a white perspective that sees the horror in the 2 white men who died. There are reports, that the town was burned, but the implication often is that that's the fault of blacks, that the town burns down.
The African American accounts of Ocoee lived with the people who experienced them initially. The ones who fled, they went to places like Apopka, went to places north or other parts of the South, and they shared those stories with their descendants who passed those stories on. And this is not unusual with racial terror in these ways. What African Americans did in 1920.
So you see here, man, perpetual hate. So I'm gonna close it out. What else I got time left? So you see, wicked shit not. Yeah, man, he ain't getting away with this. But I'm gonna close it out right there. So we're gonna give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh. By Shema Rashad, double honor to the apostle brothers, the elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the host of the elect. Shalom.